Hello and welcome to the Career Change Studio. This is the place to design and create a new working life so that you can live the way that you want and need in your next chapter. I'm Dana Stevens, certified career change coach, and I'm here to help you work out your next career move. I'm going to inspire you to think about this transition in brand new ways so that you can think differently about yourself and what's possible for you. You'll also learn how to build up your belief and self-confidence so that you can finally start taking action. This is about so much more than just getting another job. This is about changing the way you live your life for the better. Hello. Today on the Career Change Studio podcast, I'm going to bust some myths. And this is going to be the first in a little mini series of podcasts where I'm going to be busting many of the myths that come up around changing careers. But I'm starting with this one because it is the number one that my clients come to me with. We're going to be talking about how old you are and whether that makes you too old to change careers. Why are we talking about this? Because it's a fear, a worry, a doubt that, like I said, so many career change coaching clients that I work with bring to me, and it's probably something that you've been thinking as well. It might show up for you as something like, I think I'm too old to change careers, or I worry I've left it too late to change careers, or I think I should have done this years ago, or I just can't start from scratch again. So let's get into that today, because one of the things I teach my clients to do is to identify a fear they have, and instead of letting it overwhelm them or pushing it away or pretending it's not there, we want to bring it closer. We want to examine it, investigate it, check the evidence, and the more that you do interrogate it, the more you can neutralize a fear and see it for what it really is, which typically is much less of an obstacle than our brain initially likes to suggest. And this is also something I'm going to keep coming back to in this podcast over the next weeks and months, as I do with my clients. And that's helping you to see that just because your brain offers you a thought, you don't have to accept it as the truth or the only answer. You can go back and find out what other options there are. You don't have to believe the first thought that your brain offers you, or the loudest, or the most persistent. So if a loud and persistent thought that your brain is offering you is, I'm too old to change careers, today I'm going to help you see why it's actually a really unhelpful thought, how it will actually keep you stuck, and why it's actually not true. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll see why it makes so much more sense to let go of this belief, or any belief, in fact, that is not only false, but especially when it's really holding you back. Firstly, let's start with this. This is a thought that your brain is offering you, so you want to start looking at the evidence so you can determine, is this thought really true? Is it really true that you are too old? Now, I can tell you, even without knowing how old you are, that this is categorically not true. And how do I know that? Because the simple fact is that people do change careers at all ages. In their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s. And I have had clients of all ages come to me and say, I think I've left it too late. I think I'm too old. Someone said that to me who is in their late 20s. They thought they were too old. But I've got people in their 30s saying it to me, people in their 40s, people in their 50s. And do you know what this shows me? It shows me that this is just a thought that people can have at any age, and it's not factually correct at any age. Because people do change careers at every age, it is possible at every age. So I will talk in a minute about the evidence that people can change careers at any age. But before we do, let's just look at how believing I'm too old is actually one of the things that will hold you back and will make it true that you can't change careers. And it's about that thought and not your actual age. The thing is that your thoughts, what you believe, affect how you feel. And the emotions you have, the feelings you have, they affect what you do or don't do. And this in turn creates your results, the reality you end up living in. So let's just look at what happens when you believe I'm too old to change careers. In my experience, that tends to make people feel sad, despondent, unmotivated, and generally pretty low and uninspired. And when they feel that way, that's what leads to inaction. They don't bother researching different options. They procrastinate. They don't work on their CV. They don't look for opportunities in new roles. And what is the result? They end up not making any changes because they haven't taken any actions to help them decide what to do next, or haven't taken any steps to make a change happen. So they end up staying where they are. And this then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They haven't made changes because they didn't believe it was possible for them. Now, they might be telling themselves it's because of their age, but actually, it's typically this thought cycle that they're stuck in. They're not even giving themselves the chance. And even if you do get yourself to a place where you've made a decision and you've decided what to do next, that sneaky little thought, I'm too old, can really start affecting your confidence. When you think that, you start looking at all your skills and experience through that lens. You tend to focus on what you don't have, maybe the technology that you're not 100% up to speed on, the changes that might have occurred in your industry, skill sets that you don't feel 100% confident with. People then end up feeling worried about interviews. What are people going to think when they see me and see how old I am? And the truth is, if you go in there apologetic about your age, believing it might be a problem, that's how you'll come across. But if instead you're in an interview situation, really believing in your value, focused on the skills that you do have, in full belief of the weight of your experience and maturity and how that gives you so many additional skills in terms of how to handle people, situations, challenges, you can go into that interview with the energy of someone who really sees their own worth, and then you'll be focused on articulating that. So in that interview, you can be in control of the perception you put across. Not as someone older, not as that being the first thing that someone sees about you, but as someone that is bringing so much experience, value, and emotional intelligence and resilience. This is what I help my clients do, really build belief in themselves and their value at any age. So that becomes the focus of their job search, and it's not held back by their fears. So you can see how thinking I'm too old affects you right at the beginning, from taking any action to make change, all the way through to your job interview, how you present yourself if you let it. And I just want to revisit this idea of a thought cycle, the way our thinking affects our feelings, actions, and reality. Because we know now that thinking I'm too old will keep you stuck, so let's look at how changing that thought can actually be more helpful. So we don't have to go too far the other way and try and make ourselves believe it's all going to be super easy at my age to change careers, there's no problems at all, because probably that won't feel believable to you. So we could just start with, it is possible for someone my age to change careers. Now, if you believe that, you're more likely to feel hopeful, optimistic, maybe even motivated. So the actions you're going to take are starting to figure out what you want from a new role, researching options, start doing your CV, job hunting, applying for jobs. And the result will be that you'll then start getting interviews and even a new job. And oh, look, you've just proven your own thought to be true, that it can be possible for someone your age to change careers. You're going to prove it true by thinking that, feeling differently, and taking actions to make it happen. This can be the self-fulfilling prophecy that you sit with. So like I mentioned, in my coaching, one of the things I do is teach my clients how to change beliefs and strengthen new ones. And obviously when we work together, we get into that in much more detail. But one of the techniques is to look for evidence to support a new belief. And so that's what we've got to do here now, right? Ask ourselves, is there evidence that people can change careers at any age, in their 30s, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and even beyond? And the answer is yes. And I'm going to tell you some of those in a minute, some evidence, but I just want you to know that this is how I know that it is possible for you. Even though I don't know how old you are, I know because I have evidence of lots of people changing careers at all ages. I've done it in my 30s and 40s. My clients have done it in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s. People I know have done it, and there are loads of well-known people in the world, examples out there that you can look at as well. So let's talk about some actual examples, because maybe for you, you don't have lots of people in your life, in your network who have made changes. So you have to go looking for it elsewhere. Now, like I said, I have successfully changed careers twice. Firstly, in my very early 30s, when I moved from being a radio producer to moving into the world of content creation, strategy, online strategy. And ultimately, again, in my 40s, when I moved from being someone that was heading up a big strategy team in an advertising agency to be a coach to set up my own business. I'm not going to go into that now because I have actually done a whole podcast about it. So if you do want to know my story, you can go back and listen to the very first episode of this, and it's episode number 1. But I am going to tell you about lots of other people who've done it. Maybe some people you know, maybe some people you don't. Firstly, someone you probably definitely don't know, but my partner's mum. She actually retrained as a counsellor in her 60s. She did her counselling degree and now still works part-time as a counsellor in her mid-70s. Someone else you might have heard of, you may have heard of Lapland UK, right? You know, that Christmas Santa experience here in the UK, created to provide the magic that you might get from visiting Santa in Lapland, but that you can get here in this country. That was actually set up by a woman called Alison Battle and her husband. They did it together. But Alison was a primary school teacher in southeast London for 20 years. And when she was in her mid-40s, she and her husband were really frustrated with the lack of magical Christmas experiences for their kids. So they came up with the idea of Lapland UK. They took the leap. They actually even remortgaged their home. And with no events experience, they created Lapland UK, this immersive festive experience that's now visited by tens of thousands each year and brings in millions in revenue. Now, while Alison left behind the classroom and built something extraordinary in her 40s, your change doesn't have to be as radical or as high risk as that. But I want you to know that people do make these sorts of changes all the time, and you can too. Let's look at some other examples of women that have done that. So maybe you've heard of Arianna Huffington. She set up the Huffington Post in America, progressive news and blogging website in 2005. She was 55 when she did that. And she's now 75, but when she was 66, she stepped away from the Huffington Post to set up a new company, Thrive Global, which really focuses on technology that changes behaviour around health outcomes. But there she was setting up a company, another company at 66. She wasn't telling herself she was too old. She wasn't wasting time thinking about that. And you may have heard of the famous wedding dress designer, Vera Wang. Did you know that she actually didn't open her first wedding boutique until she was 40? Before that, she was a competitive figure skater, then she moved into fashion journalism. And it was only after designing her own wedding dress the year before her 40th, out of frustration at what was available on the market, that she thought she cottoned onto a business idea and then went on to open her own wedding dress business when she was 40. She's now 76 and one of the wealthiest self-made women in America, running a huge global fashion empire. And I'm not saying you need to go and do something as radical as that. You don't even need to go and start a business. But just imagine if Vera Wang had told herself when she's 40, nah, don't bother doing anything. You've probably left it too late now. Imagine you're 40, you can't do anything. Right? Imagine if she told herself that she was reaching the end of something instead of the beginning. She would have missed out on the last 36 years of building and running an incredibly successful global business. Last year, I was reading about this amazing Japanese woman called Masako Wakimaya. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's actually now 90 years old, and she learnt to code, computer programming, computer coding, when she was 81. And it sparked a whole new career for her. She used to work in finance, and back when she started in finance, it was so long ago that they were actually using like an abacus, you know, those simple counting tools with wooden beads. That's the kind of tech she was using when she first started her career. But when she had already retired and she reached her 80s, she had an idea for an app, a game for older people. And so she learned how to do software coding. Her story has inspired so many people that she's now gone on to be giving lectures. She gives lectures about inclusivity and tech for older people and is now an advocate for senior people in tech. And she still does public speaking now at the age of 90 and serves as the vice chair of the senior digital community Mellow Club and advises on the Japanese government's Council for Digital Garden City Nation. Imagine if she'd told herself when she was 80, you're too old, there's no point learning something new, there's no point trying to do something else with your life, right? This is just another example that age is just a number. It doesn't have to hold you back from learning, developing, and taking your life in a different direction. And this actually reminds me of this really beautiful letter of inspiration I read last year, written by the actress Patricia Routledge. Now, you might remember her as the indomitable Hyacinth Bouquet, or Mrs. Bucket, from the TV comedy Keeping Up Appearances. She actually sadly passed away last month, but last year when she was turning 95, she wrote a letter about how with each new decade, she embraced new opportunities and learnt new skills. And I'm actually going to put the whole of the letter in the show notes for you because it's a really inspiring read. But in it, she talks about the fact that she didn't land the role of Mrs. Bouquet or Mrs. Bucket until she was 50. How she went on to learn Italian at the age of 60 in her 60s because she really wanted to learn how to sing opera in Italian. And how at 70, she returned to the stage to do Shakespeare. And at 80, she taught herself another new skill. She started watercolour painting. And she wrote this in the letter. So I'm just going to read this out. And like I said, you can go to the show notes to see the whole thing. But she wrote this. I'm writing this today to share something simple and true. Growing older isn't a final act. It can be life's most exquisite chapter if you allow yourself to bloom once more. I think that's a lovely thing because we can really see getting older as this like terminal thing, this thing that shuts down options, rather than seeing every decade, every chapter as an opportunity to learn more, to do more, to expand ourselves, to bloom once more. Now, I could go on sharing examples of people who've changed careers or learnt new things or refused to see getting older as a sign that they should stop, retreat, or give up. But really, what I'd like to offer you is that this is something that you can start doing. Start looking around in your life for examples of what's possible. Talk to people you know who have changed careers. Ask friends of friends about their experiences. And if there's no one in your direct network, read books, listen to podcasts, find articles about people who have made changes in their midlife or later life. Find people who've made small changes. Find people who've made sideways steps, as well as the people who've made big radical shifts. Challenge your own perceptions of what is possible. There are plenty of stories online. I'm even going to link to some in the show notes as well, some articles you can read about ordinary people who've made changes and are just living differently, right? Find the evidence that exists out there that change, growth, and development is possible. The final thing I want to leave you with is this. Right now, I want you to work out how many working years you do have left. Next year, the UK state pension age actually goes up to 67. So it means for most people, retirement's about 67. But by 2044, which is when I'll be nearing retirement age, it's actually going to be more like 68. And that's if this doesn't continue going up and changing by the time we get there. So I'm 45 now. That means that I have at least 23 years left of my working life. That is a long time. That is enough time to retrain, start something new, and build a whole new career if I want to. And when I think about it in terms of the numbers, I'm actually only halfway through my working life. I've been working for about 24 years, and in that time, I've already changed careers twice. So I'm already on my third career. And in each of those careers, I've made money, I've had personal fulfillment, so I do count them all as successful. And if I've already had 3 careers within 24 years, then you can definitely make at least one change in the next 23 years. And that's if you're the same age as me, right? But if you're younger, of course, you've got even more time. If you're only 40, you've got 28 years left. If you're 35, you've got 33 years left. You have so much time. And if the thought of all that time currently feels awful or depressing and you're going, "Ugh, Dana, I don't like the idea of all that time," then take this as a sign that you're 100% in the wrong job for you. If you can't imagine doing what you're doing now for another 20 years, it's probably a sign that you want to start making changes. Honestly, I am really excited about having 23 more years left, right? I feel like I'm just getting started. And frankly, all these numbers are if we retire at the state pension age anyway. We might even want to work longer. We might enjoy what we're doing so much that we want to keep working in some capacity. My dad is still working part-time in his mid-70s because he enjoys it. And I can imagine myself doing the same. So you do have time. And you also do have the potential to do more, learn more, and achieve more later in life. You do have the capacity to learn new skills. The advances in neuroscience today tell us that our neuroplasticity, our brain's capacity to learn, grow, and evolve as we get older is so much greater than we ever understood before. And I'm actually going to do a whole separate podcast about the power of potential that we have later in life, because I feel so passionately that we really do have more potential, not less, the older that we are. So I hope this helps you think differently about what is possible for you. I hope this has challenged this myth, this thought error that you might have been thinking that you're too old. And instead of thinking that I'm too old and shutting down any possibilities for yourself, what happens if you start asking yourself these questions instead? If it is possible for me to make changes to my working life, what could I do? What would I want to do? What would be a better fit? What would make me happier? Think about that this week. All right, I will see you next Tuesday. Bye for now. And if you want to start making changes to your working life, come and talk to me. You can book a free consultation with me where we'll talk about your personal situation, what's really holding you back, and what you can do differently to start making changes. I'll let you know what type of career change coaching is going to help you, and you can ask me any questions about your personal situation or about my proven process, the Life First Career Method, a method that helps people like you change your career so that you can change your life. Just visit my website, danastevens.com. That's DANASTEVENS.com, and click on the link to book a consultation. Or you can find the link in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this podcast, make sure you get your weekly fix of inspiration and career change guidance by clicking follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to rate and review the podcast, that would really help me get this in front of people who also might be feeling stuck and lost. So I'd really appreciate your help. And if you know anyone, friends, family, even colleagues, who might be thinking about changing careers, please do share this podcast with them. You might just be the person that helps them change their lives for the better.